Hello, this is Dr. Abdelal, and we are going to speak about articulation and resonance. And this is part 2 of the unit. There will be another part. So here we're going to speak about the production of phonemes or speech sounds and how they resonate in the vocal tract. So here we speak specifically about resonance of the vocal tract and as it applies to individual consonants and individual vowels. So first, recall that resonance of a tube depends on the configuration of the tube and also for example, the length, the symmetry, and so on. So this is why it's important to know the lengths of vocal tracts for different ages. So the adult male has the longest vocal tract, from the right above the vocal folds, and it goes all the way to the lips or to the nose. So that is 17 to 18 centimeters. Adult females have 14 to 15. So if you lump male and female on average, you could say between 16 and 17 as an adult human being. Very young children are about 6 to 8, but children from like 10 years up to about 13, they go about maybe to 12 or 10 to 13 inches. It depends all on the size of the face and if the person has matured, has achieved enough maturation in the facial skeleton and the facial plate. So the vocal tract at rest, you could see that the pharynx is open, has air. You keep breathing in and out. And the mouth will be like this. There's a space between the tongue and the hard palate and the soft palate. And so at rest, this is the position of the vocal tract. How do you know its resonant frequency? We know that for any tube, in order to know the frequency of the tube, you have to put a sound wave into it. You have to put a tone into it. So the only way we can put a tone into it is if we produce a sound through the vocal tract. Excuse me. So, for example, I can know the resonant frequency of this container if I put a sound into it. So, but the vocal tract itself doesn't change as I put the tone. But how can you put a tone into the vocal tract without making it move? So that's the idea. So this is why we use the schwa sound. The symbol for the schwa sound is here. And that's like the most famous sound in phonetics. They even make shirts for it. You can Google, I want to be a schwa, made by speech language pathologists. So the schwa is the smallest sound. It requires the smallest amount of modification in the vocal tract, and it is the closest to rest. The schwa is found in sounds in words like above, alone, alone, above. It is found in it is different from aperiodic or atypical. That's a whole different sound. A is not the same, but the smallest sounds as in alone, above. So at that, the calculations that you did last for Unit 1, all these calculations for the vocal tract were based on the schwa sound. So that's like a standard for measuring vocal tract resonance. So back again to the source filter theory. That's a way to show us how the vocal tract and the vocal folds interact together to produce the final outcome that we know as speech. We said the source is the buzz that is made by the vocal folds. That buzz, we call it the fundamental frequency. So that sound, the fundamental frequency is almost like fixed for you, for everyone. They have a standard, they have one fundamental frequency. Of course, it changes day to day, but the average, your average, you can measure it over like several years. It will be similar. Of course, it will change as you grow older and so on. But that is that is the fundamental frequency. So this guy, these vocal folds vibrate just like we vibrate rubber bands or strings or a balloon, the neck of a balloon, to make a sound. There isn't very, like, it is not necessarily unique. Yes, you have your distinctive voice, but guess what? Around the world, you're going to have millions of people who have the same exact fundamental frequency like yours, because they might have exactly the same vocal fold structure, how the vocal folds vibrate. What makes your voice print is the vocal tract. It is the filter. So that buzz, that fundamental frequency is gonna, once it is released from the vocal folds, it's going to travel along the vocal tract. And as it is traveling, it is going to be modified. It will be filtered out. It will not be exactly the same as the vocal folds make. So then, as the sound goes out here, we know that this acts like, the vocal tract acts like a tube closed on one end. That's a quarter wave resonator. And that means that every even frequency is going to be attenuated, and you end up having like peaks and valleys. So in the end, the vocal tract is going to produce about 40 different formats. Recall that the formats, the highest one on the left is the loudest one, and the most important one. And then as the wave continues to play, the loudness is going to continue to decrease until the sound reaches a point where it cannot be heard anymore. So the higher the frequency, from left to right, the higher the frequency, the higher the frequency becomes as you move from left to right on this spectrogram, the lower the volume, the lower the amplitude. But in the end, this vocal buzz is going to be mixed with all these 40 different formats. And it is like you start one person singing and the 40 people join that person. But 40 with different levels of loudness and different levels of pitch. Pitches are related. Like the first one, for example, here, let's say 500 hertz, and then the second one will be 1500 hertz, and the next one will be, and then you keep going. So all of these resonances are added with the vocal fold fundamental frequency tone, and all of them produce what you see, what you hear at the lips. So that is what we mean by source filter. The source is the vocal fold buzz. The filter is the vocal tract, as it changes the tone that you make and filters out the elements that will be opposing the wave and enhances the elements that exist. I mean, that are left, they will be amplified. So we explained before how the vocal tract is independent from the vocal tract. It moves independently from the vocal folds and vice versa. I don't want to give too many examples because last time the video ended, they have limited storage. So the video ended last time, and before I finished the recording. So here you can see now the vocal folds here are going to make this kind of the source spectrum here, where remember the harmonics, the first harmonic is first you have the fundamental frequency, and then you have the first harmonic, and they keep going second, third, fourth, and you don't skip. So if this is 100 hertz, the fundamental frequency, then the next harmonic, the first harmonic is going to be 200. If the fundamental is 500, the next harmonic, the first harmonic is going to be 1000. As a rule, it will double with the first harmonic. So, and then from that point on, it's going to go, say, if we have 100 here, this will be 200, and this will be 300, 400, 500, 600, and it keeps going. But as it moves from left to right, it's going to have higher frequency, but it will have lower, amplitude. So that's what the vocal folds do. They do not really, they just behave like a guitar string or like a rubber band, and they don't filter anything out. But then as the buzz goes through the vocal folds, the vocal tract, then this is what you have now. You come at 500, it starts when the frequency here reaches 500, 500 way here, that is going to start to resonate in response. And then it skips, and then it goes to 1500, it will resonate again. Skips, goes to 2500, it resonates again. And you keep going on. The most important formants, as we explained, are first, second, third, and to some extent the fourth one. So in the end, you combine the source spectrum with the glottal airflow, and you get this pattern. Or, in kind of also this one, so that you can see the attenuation and the amplification. So that's what we mean by source filter theory. So let's look, for example, at some of these, some of the sounds here. You look at the formant values, because every sound is unique in its own way, and we are going to examine them, especially with reference to F1, F2, F3. So here, the formant of any vowel is going to depend on, number one, this will determine. Remember when we said how something vibrates at the beginning, like a guitar string or rubber band, we said that it will be determined by how long the object is, how dense or how the mass of it, how heavy it means, and the tension. But now we're speaking about air. That's a whole different matter. Now we speak about tubes and air volumes in the tubes. So what determines the frequency of the tube is, number one, the length of that tube, the length of the vocal tract from the vocal folds here to the lips. So that is one determiner. So for example, the lips can be extended. When you say ooh, it will make the pitch lower. The position of the larynx, if the larynx is high in the neck, that's gonna make the vocal tract shorter, and it will raise frequency. If the larynx goes down in the neck, then it will make the frequency lower. So you can watch. You can even predict sometimes, if you are speaking on the phone, you can predict someone's, the size of their neck, and maybe to some extent the configuration of their face based on what you hear. The vocal tract, the degree of constriction. Constriction means how narrow or how much room there is in it, how much space is available. And then the location of that constriction inside of the vocal tract. Where is it exactly? Is it in the hypopharynx, where F1 can be detected? Is it in the near the alveolar ridge, F2, or is it in the area between the velum and the dorsum of the tongue, F3? So these determine, again, the nature of resonance in the vocal tract. Now let's look at this one configuration. Say the tongue, wherever it moves, it's going to cause a constriction to the area it moves into, and it will evacuate an area. So the area that's evacuated will have more space. The area that it is moved into by the tongue, it will have less space. So the amount of space, the larger the volume is, the lower the frequency, and the smaller the volume is, the greater the frequency. So here we look at ah, as in father, ah. So that sound here, as you produce it, look at the position of the tongue. It is back and it is low in the oral cavity. So look at the size of the pharynx here and see how much there is the size of the pharynx in this one for E. Look at where the tongue is for ah. It is back and down. For E, it is forward, front and up. So now for F1, which is gonna be for ah, look at F1. So here we have 1,000, 2,000, and the frequencies that go this way. The amplitude goes this way. This is real and kind of, so here it overlays the filter and the source. And so F1 will be here for ah. Now, regardless of, what the value is, 900, 890, whatever, we look and compare it to F2 and F3. Why is F2 lower than it should be, or than usual? You look at the size of the oral cavity that's available here, the space that's available is greater, and in addition, you open your jaw, so there's a greater volume in the front, so you get F2 that is lower, and then you get the F3 that is here, that would be expected, but there's a whole, skips and skips and skips and skips, and then it shows up for this particular sound, so it shows up way late in the 200, 2000, maybe 500 or so. So then, but look at the position of the tongue now. All you do now here is to push the tongue forward and up, and then you get this configuration. So now here you are going to have, so see how F1 here is high. You're going to have lower F1 here for E, because the tongue is moved out of it, and then the area the tongue fills, so you're going to have low F2 and low F3, and you could see here low F here. I'm sorry, I meant high. I apologize. So high because so the F1 is low, and then F2 and 3 are both high. So and they have the values, the exact numbers in your textbook, and you can review, but you need to know the exact frequencies of the sounds that we discussed here. You give me numbers. So I'm here explaining how the position of the tongue modifies F1, F2, and F3. So now look at the OO. Okay, the OO, the tongue is going to be, remember the styloglossus is going to pull the tongue back and up at once. And that is going to give you the ooh sound. So here, yes, two things interact. There is a constriction in the hypopharynx. See, a constriction that should give you a high frequency for ooh, but it does not. So the reason is the law that says the longer the tube is, the lower the frequency, that overtakes the other one. That dominates it. So here is the vocal tract begins from here, and they keep measuring, or if you are travel like in the magic school bus in the mouth, travel and go up, 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 on the tongue and then keep going to the lips, and the lips are also protruded for O. So that's the vocal tract is very long. So the humping of the tongue, bringing the tongue up like a mountain in this area, is going to make the journey of the air longer, because it has to go above the tongue and it has to travel. So that is the reason that oo has such a low frequency. It is one of the lowest sounds in English for F1. And then F3, F2 is of course very low, compared to other sounds. And then you get F3, that is also relatively high, because the tongue actually goes in that area where the velum and the tongue. So relatively. So these are how you can read, the information and see how the modification, how the tongue moves, forward or back, it moves up or down. So based on that, we describe vowels. So this is why later when we say, for example, the E sound, where is it? E as in heat. The E sound we described as high front. Why? Because the tongue goes up and goes forward towards the alveolar ridge. So we call it high front. That's like implying, as if we are saying, oh, the tongue, to produce that sound, the tongue is gonna go forward and then go up. But we don't do it this way. We just simply say it is a high front vowel. And I will show you how to describe vowels and how to describe consonants. Skip, and then, sorry. Okay, let's move down. 1 second. I'm sorry, just one. So when we look at the vowel formats, these formats describe individual vowels. And they show us every one of them is going to have its own distinctive format values. And that's how we basically describe the vowels. In terms of the consonants, yes, we have some, generally, we look at the format values, but the format values are most important for vowels. So, but generally, there are some principles that are going to determine the nature of format values for different vowels. For example, there's an inverse relationship between F1, as we repeatedly mentioned, and tongue height. Why is that? Because F1 is localized in the hypopharynx. And if the tongue moves forward and goes up, the tongue is going to reshape itself so that it will evacuate, it will create more room in the hypopharynx, and it will constrict different areas in the oral cavity. For this reason, the higher the tongue is, the lower F1 is going to be, and vice versa. So you need to understand these laws. You need to memorize them if you have to, but these are critical. F2 is related to the length of the vocal tract. The oral cavity, particularly the oral cavity. And the oral cavity is modified constantly, the length by the lips. We say oo versus e. You can shorten or elongate it. So, especially in the area in front of the constriction made by the tongue. For example, when you say the area from here to the front to the lips, that's the area that is going to determine how it is going to be. But for vowels, the whole vocal tract is engaged in the resonance. But for any sound in particular, F2 in particular is going to depend or to be highly influenced by what happens in front of the tongue. When the tongue comes in and fills an area, what happens in front of it? That's going to, which is here between the alveolar ridge and the tongue tip. That's what we are speaking about. So then F2 is also related to tongue advancement. What is advancement? To advance is to march forward. So the tongue is in the middle of the mouth. If the tongue goes forward, then it's going to affect F1, F2. Why? That's going to make it take more room from the space where you could detect F2, and that will make the frequency higher. Or if the tongue goes away from it, of course, the frequency will be lower because there is more space created. So back vowels have a longer distance between the oral constriction and the lips. So, for example, when you the back vowel, that means the tongue is back, and that's going to create a greater room between the constriction, say O or U. The distance between that position of the tongue here and lips is going to be greater for back vowels. So back vowels show a low F2 because the tongue moves to the back and leave the front. F2 is localized in the front. And also, all the front vowels are going to have the characteristic of having a high F2 because the front vowels means that the tongue moves forward to fill, to take more room from the front. So back vowels, the tongue goes back. So just think about it this way. Where the tongue is not, then you have lower frequency. Where the tongue is, then you have higher frequency because the tongue takes more room. So these dark bands, they are basically, if you see them like under a microscope or something, you're going to see them as the same waves that we discussed earlier in the course. But these, the ones we discussed are like slowed down, like, millions of times. So when you take all of these, like 225 or 1,000 hertz, like a baby crying, and you make this happen in 1 second, the waves come so close to each other, and they're just create that band of energy, and that we call this that solid dark band, we call it formant on this image. And the formants, we use them to describe the human resonance. So the spectrogram goes from 0. The vertical line shows you frequency in 1,000, 2,000, 3, 4, 5, up to 6 or 8,000 hertz. Moving from left to right, the spectrogram is going to show you the time in real time, like when you say ah or e, it's going to show you in the number of seconds that you make that. So that is not just a single wave, it is many, many, many waves. And so it shows you the time, and it shows you the level of energy that's in these are all the compressions that are in the waves. So you can see now for E on the spectrogram, reading a spectrogram, and in many cases it's easy, but sometimes it can be fuzzy. But you look for the darkest band, the darkest one that shows lower, that is going to be F1. So for E, F1 is here, 0, 1,000. So this is at 300 or something like that. That is F1 for E. So E, because the tongue is out of the hypopharynx, the vocal tract skips, and the next frequency, the next time it's going to resonate here, F2, is when the wave becomes really, really, really short, and the frequency becomes high, significantly high, 2,000, maybe 500 or something like that. This is where F2, the next band that is going to show. And then F3 is going to show right above F4. So you could see this clearly. Now for U, the same, about 270 or sometimes 300, like E, very similar to E, very, very low frequency sound. And then F2 shows right after. See how compared to F3? And that is all because of the position of the tongue. Because the tongue is taken back and lifting, being raised way high like a mountain and leaving all the front just with a lot of space. And then way, see, like you can't even detect, F3. It is not significant for this sound. So now for ah as in car, that's the symbol for ah. So F1 shows it about 900 hertz. And then right above it, you have F2, and they go up a little bit, you have F3. So this is how the spectrograms show the resonant frequency of various sounds. There are two types of spectrograms. One is called narrow band and wide, and the other one is wide band. Similar to the concept of wide band, narrowly tuned resonators and broadly tuned. So we said the broad, width of the broadband, the bandwidth, the bandwidth can be broad or it can be narrow. Systems that have a narrow bandwidth, it means they're very selective. They are not going to just amplify anything that goes into them. They will not respond to just anything. You have to come very, very close to their range. It's like someone saying, okay, I am a 10-year-old. I am going to play, I will never play with anyone except someone who is within 1 month from my age. So what is the possibility of that 1 month? So, that person can be 1 month younger or 1 month older. So that's from 11 years, 11 months. No, from 9 years, 11 months to 10 years and 1 month. That is the bandwidth of that person. So that person is going to exclude so many people who are not going to play with them. Now the white band is going to say, you know, I am 10 years old, but I can play with someone who's 8 years old and someone who is 12 years old. So I expand my choices, my options. Anyone who comes to join the game, they are welcome. So the wide band or the broad band can accept many tones, can amplify and respond to a lot of different options, vocal options. But the narrow band has only very limited wide bandwidth. So this narrow band spectrogram, or spectrography, the process, is going to focus on the fundamental frequency and the specific harmonics that are produced by the vocal folds. And it uses the filter that is has a bandwidth of 45 to 50 hertz. So remember, the bandwidth, when you put it, it's going to be divided. So let's say if it's 50 hertz, it's like you have a sound, and that particular, you have a particular, like say, say the vocal tract is 500, for example, and that vocal tract decides to only accept 25 hertz below its resonant frequency or 25 hertz above. So that's very restricted. Of course, the vocal tract doesn't do that, but these are machines that they use so that they can detect the smallest variations between sounds. And so this responds to each individual harmonic, and that focuses on only on the fundamental frequency and the way that the vocal folds vibrate. What the wide band is focuses on the resonant frequencies of the vocal tract. It focuses on studies the formats and the vocal tract as it behaves while the sounds are produced. It uses a wider filter, a filter with a wide band that is 300 to 500 hertz. So, so in other words, you could say 250 below, 250 above. It detects and adds up all the multiple harmonics in the vocal tract. We said there are more than 40 harmonics in the vocal tract, and this wide band is good. That's in addition to the buzz from the vocal folds. So that wide band is going to be able to add all of these harmonics together, and it will detect each one of them. Okay, we come to the fun part. If you have not had phonetics already, this will be kind of an easy going introduction. If you have had phonetics, that we can't get away with it, without it. So now we move on to the acoustics of the English vowels. And in English, we have 13 vowels. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, we'll explain. This sound, this vowel here, is more a characteristic of British English, and it's found in some words, in American English, but it is not something that you will find much in American English. So we tend to study all these vowels, actually 14. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11, 12, 13, 14. So we have 14 vowels. This one, again, for American English, it doesn't, we do not have it much. So using this chart, I am going to explain, give you a quick review of the vowels, and you can write notes in your textbook. You have a lot of explanation. So this is meant to make it easier for you. So this is called the quadrilateral. A quadrilateral is a shape with different, every side of it is different in length. So, and it represents the space that's available in the vocal tract, the space that's available for vocalization, for speaking. Where the tongue moves and so on. So here, the back of this is where the pharynx is. This is where the alveolar ridge, for example, will be here, and this is where the tongue is going to be. The floor of the mouth is here, and this will be the soft palate, the hard palate, and the soft palate will be above here. So this is the configuration, and the vowel sounds are listed. Now forget about the spelling. We do not, in phonetics, we don't worry about the spelling. We focus only on the on the sounds themselves as they produce them. So we have the sounds are divided based on, or the vowels are described based on two things that the tongue does. Where is the tongue? Is it in back of the oral cavity? Is it in the center of the mouth? Or is it in the front? So back, central, front. Then we look at the height, tongue height. Where is the tongue in terms of height? Is it low? Is it in the middle? Or is it high? When you make these sounds. So as low, middle, mid. We don't say middle, we say mid and high. So let's take this is the E. I'd like you to write down each symbol and write a couple of words that I will say to go with that symbol so that you know how to write them, how to use them. So E as in he, or as in feed, E, okay? The tongue, if you look, we should, here, so here. So E, see where the tongue is? The tongue is front and it is high. So we always begin with the advancement first, and then we do the height. So we say this is a, no, we do the height first and then the advancement. We say, so E is a high and then front vowel. The A is low and back vowel. U is low, is a high and back because the tongue is high. Okay, so we look at, again, describe a vowel based on tongue height, how high the tongue is, and tongue advancement. So if you look here, for example, that purple line, the tongue is going to be the lowest level arrow, and it goes back and it takes part, a part of the, it fills part of the hypopharynx. And the muscle here that we discussed before that is called O, as in law. This vowel is fading out of American English. It is found in some words, but it is fading out. So the law. So anyways, you study all of these differences in phonetics. Look at how the O, as in rose, actually, as in Melrose. Melrose is a shorter kind of O. And that is the blue, where the tongue is back and actually middle, in the middle. And look at O, where the tongue is back and high. So tongue advancement, how high or low is the tongue, high, mid, or low. And the advancement is the tongue back, in the center or front. And then we add to these two things, two characteristics for vowel description. We focus on muscular tension. How much force, how much energy did you use to make a particular sound? Vowel, I mean, only vowels are described this way. So, and then we use lip rounding. Is the sound rounded? Is the vowel rounded or unrounded? So these four characteristics. So for example, I take the oo, oo. Let me go to the chart, oo. That's the symbol. It makes it different from this one because of that little thing hanging down here. That is oo. You'll notice it is high and it is back. So the farthest back and the highest. So that is oo as in pool, pool. If you make it shorter, it will be oh. Okay, ooh, oh. So oh is gonna be like in pull, and you make it the oh longer, so it will be pull, pull, pull. So full, full. So these two sounds are put in the same box because both of them are in the back. The tongue is back, but the only difference between them is that the ooh is higher. The tongue goes higher, and oh, the tongue, it is still high. It is described as high, but not as high as oh. So when you describe them, this is how to. Oo is oo as in pool or full. It is high, back, and then you speak about two other conditions. What about tension? Is it tense or lax? The long one that takes a longer time to make, the oo, is tense. It's like if you to say hold this, and I ask you to hold it for 5 minutes like this, and then I ask you on your other hand to hold another cup for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes. So which arm is going to exert more energy? Which arm will hold longer? So when you say ooh, the articulators will spend more energy because the sound lasts longer. But the oh, the sounds do not. I mean, the articulators do not last longer. So that will become lax. So they come in. This is how we describe. So we say now high, back, lax. Now look at rounding. Is it rounded or unrounded? Ooh, rounding means that the lips physically are circled and go out. Like say ooh, oh, and oh, or See, you can feel the lips protruding, go out. You need to know this because I will be asking you all kinds of questions about this chart and about to describe any number of sounds I give you. You only use 4 individual descriptors that we are using here. So I'm going to describe each one of them. You know the number of words that it comes in, and you need to know if it is, describe it with these 4 characteristics. So oo as in pool and full. It is a high, back, tense, rounded. Oh, it is the same description, but it is different in tension. So high back, lax, rounded. So let's move on then to the rest of the back vowels. O as in Melrose, Melrose, or Caterose, or fructose. Oh, it is not as long as when you say rose by itself, rose. But so if you imagine someone with the name Katie Rose, so the O doesn't become as long as when you say the word rose by itself. So this vowel is mid height, mid, back, tense, rounded. All, as in law, or I thought, or I caught. Again, this is like fading out of American English, but you can still notice it in some regional areas here. So that is all, or like a backward C. It is mid, back, tense, rounded. Ah, now watch, Yes, the lips move, the jaw goes down, but it's not rounded. So is low, back, tense, unrounded. Okay, let's move on to the front vowels. So all of these, the back vowels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all of them are rounded except for one. So in case I ask you to name all the back vowels, all the front, all the central. So E, as in he, or fee, or feel. So feel, and this one is feel, feel, and both of them are high. The only difference is that one is tense, one is lax. So E is high front, actually the farthest to the front and one of the two highest. High front, tense, unrounded. So heat, hit, feet, fit, seat, sit. So the is high front, lax, unrounded. This one is A. As if it comes in a word that has two syllables or more. Like when you say bay, A is long, a long sound. But if you say back bay, you don't say back, I'm going to go to back bay. You don't do it this way. You say back bay. So you make this short, back bay. So in that case, just give me 1 second. Okay, so when you say back bay, that is a. It is mid, and then front, mid, front. So the tongue is in the middle of the mouth, and the tongue is forward, front. And you can find again this is in the keyword back bay. Other examples. When you say day, that's an exaggerated. This becomes a diphthong. But we want to, if you have any day of the week, and you're going to find it in the second part of that name. So when you say Friday, you don't say Friday, you say Friday. So that becomes shorter. So this sound is found in Friday, Saturday, Monday, the rest of the days. Back day. Anywhere you have the two syllable word, and this comes in the part of the word that's not stressed. This one is as in head, said, bed, read. Okay, so that is called the epsilon. So it's mid, front, lax, unrounded. This one, the A, is mid, front, and tense. Then the A, this is the like an A carrying a backpack, I say. A. This is the low, front. I think it is lax. Let me see. Here are tense vowels. Yeah, it is lax. And unrounded. The A is found in can, man, tan. You have a good tan. So A, slow, front, lax, unrounded. Then we said we ignore this one because we don't spend, 5 minute examples of it. And then you look at these where the tongue is in the center of the oral cavity, and in terms of height, and the tongue is in the middle, also in terms of advancement. So it is, we call these sounds, central vowels, actually, central vowels. Here's the schwa, and it exists in words like above, alone, and it also comes at the end in words like, if you say Clara, or you say Sarah, at the end, Sarah, it's a short sound. So it is lax. It will be mid-central, lax, unrounded. Then the kind of an exaggerated form of it, a stronger form of the is this sound. That is like, we call it the wedge sound or the carrot sound, or sometimes based on the sound, if the word that comes, you can call it the cup sound, because it comes in the word cup or mug or bug. So that is the sound, and it is lax. So it is mid, central, lax, unrounded. These two, this one is the symbol. This one is the as in bird, stir, fry. I want to have a stir fry. Can you stir the tea? So that's the exaggerated, strong, we call it schwar sound. So it is tense. The lax form of it is the as in better, or clever, or carpenter. So the er at the end of words usually is transcribed with the It's called the lax, or the schwar lax. So the is mid-central, tense. Look, rounded. And the is mid-central, lax, and rounded. So these are all your vowels. You need to be prepared. If I ask you to describe the central vowels, or the back vowels, or the front vowels, I'll give you individual vowels to say, describe them for me. You cannot, if you go and say, oh, the tongue goes left and goes right and goes up. No, you must use the 4 descriptors as I use them here. Okay, otherwise any other answers would not be acceptable. So here is a summary of what I explained. The tense vowels include e, u, o, and a. And they involve, as you can see, more extreme articulations. The articulators work harder, and they last for a longer time. There's more muscular energy involved. They can occur in open syllables. What is an open syllable? Simply a syllable that doesn't have a consonant in there. Excuse me, like pa, ma, or spa, for example. You can't do that. But the lax ones cannot do that. They can't occur in open syllables. There are no English words that do that. I mean, except for actually the schwa. I'm going to say Sarah. You better, like New England or Boston, better. So the tense vowels may be diphthongized. What does that mean? We'll look at the diphthongs later. The diphthong is a blend of 2 vowels. You blend them together, but you move from one to the other. You glide as you move from one to the other. So, for example, the A, as in back bay, Sunday, A, as opposed to day. So when you say day by itself, you transcribe it with a diphthong, A, 2 symbols, but they are a single sound. So this is A as in day, but this is A as in Sunday, Monday. It doesn't. Yes, it is tense, but it isn't as tense as that one. And then the O, as in Melrose, coming again in a syllable in the word that is not stressed, and always it comes. This one always comes in words that are more than 1 syllable. But all words that are a single syllable, they take this form here. O, the diphthong, exaggerated, takes more time. You switch from one sound to the other, but each one becomes shorter. O, rose, toes. So all single words will take this one and this one. And words that are made of more than 1 syllable are going to take this one. I'm going to take this one. So these are the lax vowels. Again, they have less energy involved, and the postures of the articulators are not exaggerated. They last for a shorter duration, and they do not occur in open syllables, except for the schwa. So, for example, you know what? I remember an example of someone from Boston who was bringing his son for speech language pathology, and to the clinic, and then he said, "Honey, did you pack the cat? Did you pack the cat? Did you pack the cat?" So he used that as in an open syllable, but typically they are not used in standard American English. These, except for the as in Clara, Sarah, the other ones do not occur in open syllables. So diphthongs. We said in a diphthong, the vocal tract is going to modify itself quickly to switch from one sound to the other. And so a diphthong consists of, the movement is first an on glide. On glide is the starting sound, the sound you start with, like ah, and then e, ah, e, o, u, oi. So the starting point is the on glide, the first part of the sound. And the second sound involved is the off glide. That's the end point. So the vocal tract modifies itself to make these sounds. So these include, the diphthongs are 5. These include I, and you can see 2 sounds blended, but we consider them individual sounds. I, and then oi. So I, examples for this is I, or my, or mine, sky, that is I. And then oi, as in boy, toy, soy, Troy, boil. So that's oi, backwards C and eh. And then ow, as in ow or cow. Do it right now, ow. So we go from a to the o. And then this one, as I explained, is a, as in day. If you shorten it, it will become as Monday. But these come in individual words that are one syllable only. A, day, tray. O, as in rose, toes. That is the diphthong. So these are examples. You need to prepare a few words that are, each one of these comes in, and be ready to describe diphthongs or list all of them and give a word for each one or a number of words in which these sounds occur. So this is how on the spectrogram, how you are going to see the representation. So here's F1, here's F2, and here's F3. And we see it for the diphthong. Here, I'm sorry, they are not using phonetic symbols. They're just using symbols. But I'm going to be consistent, I'm going to describe this. You go from A to the E, but you shorten the A to make it into this. So when you say A, you blend it with this one, A. But we said that you shorten each one. So you shorten the A into this sound, and you shorten the E into E. So it will be I. So the remember, F1 for A is relatively like 900 or so. I'm sorry, F1 is high for A. But how is it for E? It's quite low for E. So we say A, E. And you can see now the frequency going down. For A, the front is wide open. There's more air space. And the frequency goes down for A. But look what it does as you switch, you transition as to the E, then the frequency goes way higher. And then for the third one, they're almost close. But you can see this one here, oi, that is oi, that is the opposite. Why is F1 here low? Oi, because of the wider space. And E, you go oi, and you switch to E, that is gonna raise. Oi is going to be higher as you switch. Oi. So F1 here is actually similar. O and E, they are very similar. You don't notice much, but the second, significantly, because the E is higher and the O is lower, because there's a lot of space in front. So you can look at these patterns and see how they are. I don't want to consume so much time and then run out of space again. This is the ow, as in cow, and this is the this is the u. We don't worry about this. And this is the A, and this is the O. So you can compare. You have the data in your textbook and the values and exact numbers and so on. So for the consonants, we have two groups, and I mentioned a lot of them before. But now we're going to look at them in terms of resonance in the vocal tract. So we divide the consonants into resonance and non-resonant sounds. We call a consonant, it's a phoneme. A vowel is a phoneme. So resonant consonants are also called sonorants. That is used by linguists. But we, as speech pathologists and hearing scientists, we use resonance because we emphasize the resonance in the vocal tract. So what is the difference between resonant consonants and non-resonant consonants? Resonant consonants, they resonate along the entire vocal tract. They're very similar to vowels. They have a free airflow. Like when you say you can go indefinitely. When you say they can go on and on. They have the A is separate from periodic. They have one periodic laryngeal source, and of course they have another non-periodic source. They have formant values as well, very similar to vowels. So non-resonant sounds, they are marked by a constriction, a major constriction in the vocal tract somewhere where there's constriction, either complete constriction, closing off the airway completely, or partial constriction. And in front of the constriction, so the front of the mouth is, if you have a constriction here, you say ka, ka. In front of the constriction, the space from the constriction to the end of the lips, that is where your space that is resonating, only in front of the constriction, and there is no resonance behind. Okay? So that is the difference. Resonance, they resonate primarily in front of the constriction, and they are characterized by either partial closure of somewhere in the vocal tract or by complete closure. And they have aperiodic source, okay? And the aperiodic is that like obstruction in the oral tract. So they may be voiced or voiceless. However, all resonant sounds are voiced, okay? But non-resonant sounds, we conveniently describe them as we find them in pairs. One is voiced, one is voiceless. But all the resonant sounds, the 7 of them, are voiced. So let's look at them. So here, the resonant phonemes include, is known, don't worry about approximants, but you can say nasals, liquids, and glides. And non-resonants include stop sounds, also called plosives, fricatives, and affricates. Okay, remember, affricates have 2 F's, affricates. So what are these? I'm going to describe them all here, and take notes just the way that I described the vowels. But in consonants, because some of them are voiced, some are not, and they're described in a totally different way than vowels. Okay, so when you describe a consonant, you voiced or not voiced. So you say voiced or voiceless. You don't say unvoiced, voiced or voiceless. And then you go to the placement. Where is it produced in the vocal tract? The placement. And then you go to the manner. What does it sound like? Does it make a little explosion? Does it make friction? And so on. So these are the. So let's take the group all consonants of English and describe them this way. So in terms of voicing, it is here, say voiceless or voiced. In terms of manner, if it is a stop, a fricative, affricate, and so these are divided into, don't worry about upstront and so on, do not worry about this classification, just look at the manner, voicing, and place. So I'm going to describe all of them, and it's a simple system, but you need to really memorize this table and know how to describe consonants. So let's take the P. It is first you start with VPM in the description. Say P is voiceless. And then bilabial, the 2 lips are involved, voiceless, bilabial, and then stop. The quality of it, you block the air. It is also called plosive. This whole category is called plosive. Because when you say stop, you explode. You stop, pop, or all of these sounds, all the stops block the airway totally. And they're followed by a release or a little explosion. So, P is a voiceless bilabial stop. B is exactly the same description, except that B is voiced. So these are called cognates. Cognates, or a cognate pair, are 2 consonants. One of them is voiced, one is not. And they agree on manner and on placement. Okay, they only differ in voicing. Cognate pair or cognates. So you trace from the front. You notice they are traced from the front. Say P, 2 stop sounds, 2 bilabial sounds. One is voiceless, one is voiced. Then you go down into the oral cavity and you find the next 2 stops are T and D. So T is a voiceless alveolar stop. D as in kid. So this is voiced alveolar stop. K. Now the V lung interacts with the back of the tongue, and as you keep going back, this is going from front to back. So you go to the K, and it will be voiceless velar from velar, voiceless velar stop. G is the same except for the G is voiced. This sound is like the question mark. It doesn't have a dot under, just like this. It's the as in ka n, ba n. Okay? Or if you say ba'al. So the vocal folds do not vibrate. The vocal folds just go slam, go away. Actually, like this. Vibration is like this. They go slam, go away. So that is a voiceless glottal stop. So these are the stops again. Then we move to the fricative sounds. This is the biggest category. And it is made by, there are, how you produce all of these sounds is by making a partial constriction, and the air streams out of the constriction, and of course, the area in front of the constriction will resonate, and behind it will not. So again, trace from the lips and go back. So these are 4 pairs, and the first one is voiceless, labiodental, voiceless, labiodental fricative. Is the same except voicing, V is voiced. The theta as in math. This one is voiceless, interdental, also called lingua dental. Either term is fine. And this one is the voiced form of it. That is the, as in father, the. So that is voiced, interdental, or voiced lingua dental fricative. Sometimes even they call them dental, but you should not do that. Just say interdental or lingua dental. Then as we keep going here, the s is a voiceless, and because the tongue makes contact with the alveolar ridge, you say voiceless alveolar fricative. And z is the same, but it is voiced. Now this one, my mouse is just there. This one is the sh sound. So it is voiceless palatal, because you move from the alveolar ridge to the hard palate, the beginning of the hard palate. This is why I call it palatal. Voiceless palatal fricative. And the voiced form of it is zzz, as in garage, garage. Voiced palatal fricative. And then the last one pair, two pair, one cognate pair, second, third, fourth, and then the h as in high. So that is a voiceless glottal fricative. Glottal, these are called glottals because they are made in the space between the vocal folds. Okay, so now we discussed all the stops, fricatives, and then the affricate sounds. There are only two sounds, a combination of one stop that is released into a fricative. So you take the t sound, this category here, and combine it with this category, this here, this cognate pair. Take the t, combine it with the sh. It becomes ch here, ch, as in cat, ch, match, chair, ch. That's an affricate. It is voiceless, palatal affricate, and take the d, combine it with the j, it becomes j, as in judge, page, range. So that is voiced palatal affricate. So again, we discussed the stops, fricatives, and affricates now. Then we will look at the group called liquids. No, not yet. Actually, nasals first. So all of these, the top three categories are the non-resonant sounds, and all of the lower ones, the nasals and the liquids and the glides, all of these are resonant sounds where the entire vocal tract is engaged in resonance, and they have a continuous stream of air. You notice also that all of them are voiced. They do not have cognates. Cognate pairs are only in the previous three categories. So nasals, and the voiced bilabial. Nasal, as in night. You notice how your tongue goes to the alveolar ridge, night. So becomes voiced alveolar nasal. And so the palate comes down, the back of the tongue goes to meet it, so that becomes velar, and it becomes voiced velar nasal. And then we have the liquids, which are the and the So for the as in light, it is voiced alveolar, voiced alveolar, voiced alveolar liquid. Don't use lateral or right, just voiced alveolar liquid. The we use the regular like we use here in America in speech pathology. That's like ring. Some people would use one, but anyways, I don't want to confuse you. You just use this one. This one is, as you say it, ring, ear. The tongue is not really making contact with the alveolar ridge. So the sides of the tongue are lifting and curving and meeting with the palate, the hard palate. So we call this sound voiced palatal fricate. Voiced palatal liquid. This one is supposed to be like the Spanish R, the trilled R. And then we have the glides, almost like they go from one sound to a second sound. There are two of them. Ooh, we, as when are you gonna go? We. So that is a voiced bilabial glide. Ooh, you switch from one to the other. And then yeah, this is not a J, okay? This is yeah, as in yes, yes. That's also a glide. But you notice, so let's describe the yeah first. So yeah is a voiced palatal glide. And now the only sound, only consonant in English or anywhere, the only consonant that has two placements is the w. Okay, so it is, you can describe it this way: it's a voiced bilabial velar glide, because the velum is involved. You don't see it, feel it, but it is involved, and the lips are involved. So bilabial velar and voiced bilabial velar glide. So that is the summary. I mean, a review of the entire class of phonetics you got here. You can go back and study it more. So now the three nasals of English, I described each one, but I'm going to kind of not to repeat much. But the description of the nasal sounds is characterized by something called nasal murmur. And the nasal murmur, when you look at the band, see the formats, you look and you do not see like I mean, as you see, the nasal murmur, it has these individual bands of energy, but they are not dense. They show loss of energy. These are called anti-formants or anti-resonance, opposing forces that actually attenuate the wave more. The nasal cavity serves as a band stop filter. Okay, it is opposite the vocal, the pharynx and the oral cavity, where they enhance what's in the band.